So we do have a couple creepy and strange things to get into today, like for example, an update to a news story where this woman was attacked by some unknown creature. But the update is pretty weird. But first, here we go again with these things, straight nightmare fuel. Now, I have spoken about these robotic dogs with the heads of famous people once before, like when one was seen walking in California with the head of Elon Musk. But we have another quote-unquote art show with these things once again making an appearance, this time in Germany a few days ago. I really don't understand the purpose or why this would be considered art, but I guess anything can be considered quote-unquote art. But this just gives every bit of the feeling of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But moving on, I have been waiting for quite some time for an update when it came to this news story. So what am I talking about? Well, back on March 29th, there was this woman, Alicia Maxey. She went to this residence in Blanco, Oklahoma to inquire about a job on this farm. Maxey, when retelling the story, she remembers pulling up to the residence gate, getting out of her vehicle, hearing this deep growl before being suddenly attacked by this unknown creature that she says was dog-like but certainly wasn't a dog. Authorities who found her unconscious because somebody called 911 also agreed to the fact that this couldn't be a dog due to the severity of her injuries, with the sheriff overseeing what happened saying this.
Did a search for answers.
38 years, I've never been involved or seen anything to this extent as far as injuries caused by a wild animal. Our question now is what caused these injuries?
They had some theories. It could have been a mountain lion, a coyote, even a bear, but they were adamant it was no dog. There were even some people suggesting it could have been the cryptid known as the Dogman. So the investigators, they took her torn clothes for a DNA analysis to see what kind of animal could have caused this. 30 plus years, never seen anything like it before. Well, we finally have an update. The results came back. This same sheriff has come back saying that the DNA results show that the animal that attacked this woman was a domesticated dog. Yeah, apparently her clothing was tested at the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Florida, and it has shown that her injuries, this attack, came from a domestic dog, and they can definitely rule out a wild animal. So that was quickly swept under the rug, and I had to search for this update. Because what's weird, when this story first broke out, due to how odd they were making this, that nobody's ever seen something like this before, the woman saying that it was dog-like, but it wasn't a dog, really made the news. It made multiple social media accounts. It was a pretty big story, and yet this update was pretty much swept under the rug. Not even a feral dog, because there is a difference when it comes to DNA between a feral dog attack and a domestic dog attack. Now, don't get me wrong, I do know domestic dogs can really do some damage, but they really made it seem like this was no dog, especially a domestic one. Weird, this is definitely one of those stories where you either believe the mainstream narrative or you feel like something more is happening here, and again, they're just quickly sweeping it under the rug and we're going to hear no more about it. But next, I do want to go ahead and talk about this news story. This sounds like this comes straight out of an X-Files episode. Matter of fact, it does. But this also sounds like multiple sci-fi movies you may have seen in the past. So last month, multiple news agencies were talking about this ship called the Blue Heron. This ship sails all over the Great Lakes, and last year it was receiving routine maintenance. The individual doing the maintenance was Marine Superintendent Doug Ricketts, and as he's inspecting the rudder shack part of the ship, he stumbles upon something he's never seen before, what looks like to be a mysterious black goo. The same black goo one would see in alien movies like, for example, Prometheus, or oddly enough, seeing celebrities splatter all over themselves. So upon reading this, it already sounds like a sci-fi movie gone bad. But anyway, this individual, Doug Ricketts, surprised by what he saw, he takes a cup and puts this black goo inside a cup. So he takes this cup of black goo and he brings it to the researchers at the University of Minnesota Duluth, where they would go ahead and name this sample Ship Goo 001. These researchers would then begin to study this goo, and to their surprise, it contained life. But not just any life, a microbial species unknown to science. In their words, they have never seen anything like this before. The research team reconstructed 20 genomes from the goo, then they compared those genomes to a database of previously identified organisms. One of the species represents an entire new order of Archaea, while another might represent a new bacterial phylum. Those who are operating the ship have absolutely no idea how it got there. Again, they were expecting to find nothing. They're coming up with multiple theories, and again, I'm reminded of an episode of the X-Files with this thing called Purity, which was also a black oil or a mysterious black goo. This black goo was an alien virus that thrived in petroleum deposits underground on Earth. The virus was capable of entering humanoids through their eyes, mouth, ears, and nose, and assuming control of their bodies. It was sentient and was capable of communicating. It is the life force of the alien colonist, which they seemingly use to reproduce their kind, as well as infect other alien races in order to conquer the universe. So again, that was coming from the X-Files. Now, I'm not saying what was featured on the ship happened to be featured on the X-Files. I'm just saying it's very interesting timing. They're finding this, an organism no one's ever seen before. And with this also taking place within the Great Lakes, which is apparently a hotbed for UFO activity and other strange events, to the point that Lake Michigan is also known as the Lake Michigan Triangle. Around the same time, we're getting this quote-unquote alien disclosure. But I am sure they know what this black goo is they're releasing onto the public. It has a very long history. We even have news articles like this being released back in 2022, the biggest threat to humanity, black goo. The article gets into graphene oxide, but then it goes into how black goo constantly appears in media and how it's always negative. It has a long history in Hollywood for a reason, and whatever they're showing us in Hollywood, they're usually giving us the truth in plain sight. Some theorize that this black goo has connections to demons, is demonic in nature, which is a clip I'm going to play towards the end of this video coming from a professor, while others theorize that entire countries have gone to war over it. Is that important?
This black goo that was stored in a perpetually frozen environment. And what is it? Well, it's like this intelligent, sentient life form. You know, you'd look at it and say maybe that's just oil or something, but when you put your finger close to it, it wants to join with you. It wants to become part of you. And so the British were tipped off that this could really enhance their super soldiers. So the whole Falkland Wars was fought over getting the black goo from South Thule Island from a group of Argentinian researchers that just put up a white flag and surrendered. Not a shot was fired, but this was called Operation Keyhole. And it was the secret war within the cover story of the Falkland Wars to go and get this black goo. So then they go and get it, and they put it in these special containers that Miles Johnson's whistleblower was talking about, somebody who was in the Royal Navy that witnessed it. And when they got up close to the equator, it started to activate, started to wake up, come out of the deep freeze. And then they got it to the UK, and they allowed it to be backward engineered by Marconi Laboratories in the UK, and it got out of control, and dozens of researchers either died mysteriously or committed. And there's a whole string of weird deaths related to it. But it was all to understand what it was and then give little bits of it to their super soldier program.
The thing about GEC Marconi, because they were also tied to Reagan's Star Wars program as well, and that was theorized to be connected to Project Bluebeam, a lot of these scientists, 20 plus British scientists connected to Marconi, did meet very mysterious ends and disappearances, kind of like what we're seeing today. This next interesting video comes from the Jody69, but after his video, somebody may have captured one of these on camera.
What is actually flying around our skies other than airplanes? And why do I say that? Because United Airlines Flight 1980, flying over San Diego, California, claimed to have struck something. The pilots of the Boeing 737 at first said it was a drone, but listen carefully to the description he gives to the tower.
Roger, 1980, get off of runway 27 at Broadway. 1980, Roger, straight ahead to spot 1, and when their contact ramp. Yeah, put a spot 1, and then contact ramp, and we hit drone at around, probably at around 3,000 feet, about, around on our base leg, between Jet Dog and Saeed. Red drone heading west. Do you have like an approximate size or how many engines or a style or anything like that? It was so small, I couldn't tell. It was red. It was shiny.
And you just heard it for yourself. At first, he claims it was a drone. We hit it at 3,000 feet. And then he was asked again, any lights, any indicators? No, I really couldn't tell. It was red and shiny. So do you think it could have been this right here? Red and shiny? Or how about, like many are claiming it was, one of these? You know, these that have been spotted in a lot of different areas? And once again, a lot of people that listened to that transmission claim that the pilot knew exactly what the aircraft struck, but just changed the wording a little bit because he was on an open mic.
Modern drones can travel 3,000 feet, but the way he described it was kind of odd. And then I saw this video from the paranormal chick, and I'm wondering if this is what the pilot saw.
The following video comes from a woman with the handle name of Biker Witch. Her husband was driving down a remote road in Ohio when he captured something truly out of this world, what appears to be a bright, glowing UFO just literally hovering above him. I don't think he was supposed to capture this, but he did. Take a look at this footage, comment below, let us know what you think. Is this our technology or is this alien?
Literally nothing out here.
This woman on TikTok did a AI filter where it expands your photo. She uploaded a photo of her cat and dog on her couch. The AI expanded it and it put a random woman on her couch. Now she thought that was pretty weird, but she kind of chuckled at it until she started looking closer at the woman. When she realized that this looks a lot like her deceased mother. Here's a photo of her deceased mother for reference. AI kind of creeps me out because I have seen a lot of videos where people will take photos and AI will add something into it. And I've wondered if AI was able to pick up on ghosts and spirits and stuff like that. And with this particular occurrence, I think that it might. I mean, that looks a lot like her mom, y'all. The AI generated photo has the same face shape as her mom. It has wavy hair like her mom, even the same hair color. Now, I did see some theories that maybe the AI was able to go into her photos and it just so happened to add a photo of her deceased mother into its program. But I don't know because I've seen other instances of stuff like this too. What do you guys think?
And more than likely, that is what happened, AI. And this video comes from Whoa, That's Strange. Once this photo was taken, AI went through this woman's gallery and made additions. We've heard stuff like this before, but this does not make it any less disturbing. I have made a video once before that Google's AI is allowed to go through people's galleries and photos with or without their consents.
I wasn't planning on filming our anniversary dinner, but when we walked up, there was a dead body outside, so I knew it was going to be an eventful.
Hey, so what's wrong with you? What is wrong with people in general? If you watch the entire video, she goes on just talking about their dinner, but that she made sure to pull out her phone because there was somebody who had passed away outside. And then she ends the night with this photo talking about the flashing blue and red lights. I do not understand the level of whatever this is. Honestly, I'm actually at a loss for words. The lack of empathy, the fact that this is somebody's child, somebody's mother, brother, sister, cousin, aunt, uncle, I don't care. The fact that you pulled out your phone to do this for content, I think that you need to put the phone down. I think that we really need to rethink.
That video came from Sip Tea with Brittany, and this video disturbed me in a way not paranormal or a conspiracy, but just goes to show how desensitized we are when it comes to people passing away. They can pass away right in front of us. There can be police surrounding their bodies, paramedics, and the first thing we do is take out our cameras and make a scene with it. Even though this is something that has been well known for quite some time now, it's still very, I don't know, I guess shocking to see somebody having such little disregard to somebody passing away.
There is something very off with the Great Wolf Lodge. The baby in that video began crying immediately after walking into the room at the Great Wolf Lodge, and people in the comments were saying that that little girl is not just feeling something off about this place, but she must be seeing something that they can't see. And this is all the more believable if you've heard that story about the family of 4 staying at the Great Wolf Lodge. The premise of the story is that these parents and their 2 children had booked 2 rooms, one for him and his wife with a queen bed in it, and then a bunk room for the children that had an adjoining door, meaning that a door in the parents' room connected them to the room right next door with the bunk beds where the children would sleep. Well, they went off and enjoyed their day at the water park and came back to their rooms to sleep after a very eventful day. But around midnight, their 6-year-old son burst through the door to the parents' side of the room, crying and terrified. The dad thought that maybe he had just had a nightmare, but then the little boy said that he had seen something in his room. So the dad gets up to go check the exterior doors to both rooms to make sure he had locked them, and he had. So at this point, he just starts to think, okay, my little one's imagination must be running a little wild, and he let his son sleep in their bed with them for the rest of the night. But then at 3 a.m., the mom wakes up and is frantically looking around, which then wakes her husband up. When the husband asks her what's wrong, she says, "You didn't hear someone just scream, Mom?" The dad gets up out of bed again to go check on the other child, who is still in the adjoined room. But instead of being in bed, he finds her huddled up in the corner of the room, hyperventilating. And the daughter basically described seeing the same exact figure that her brother had seen. So at this point, the dad is now freaking out. He's running around, turning all of the lights on, checking under the beds, in the closets, looking for some sort of explanation for what now both of his children have seen. The mom is asking her daughter more questions about what she had seen, and she's giving her the details, saying that she was so scared that she crawled across the floor and hid in the corner of the room, trying to stay as quiet as humanly possible. But as the daughter is telling the story, the mom says, "If you were trying to stay as quiet as possible, why were you screaming out for me?" And the daughter says that she wasn't the one calling out for her mom. So they're all freaked out by this point. The dad decides that he's going to stay up until daylight just to keep an eye on everything while his family tries to get some rest. Well, once everyone had fallen back asleep, he starts to hear a loud banging noise coming from the other side of the adjoining door. Obviously, he's absolutely terrified, right? But he decides, you know what? I have to protect my family. So he gets up to go see what is banging on this door. And when he opens it up, he notices that the lights in the bunk room are still on, there's nobody inside, and his children are safe and sound with his wife in their bedroom. But then he starts to hear his wife panicking in her sleep, so he starts trying to wake her up. When she does wake up, she tells him that she was having a terrifying nightmare where she had woken up in the same exact bed in the same room they were in at that moment, but she had gotten out of the bed to use the bathroom. When she opened the door to leave the bathroom, she was suddenly stuck inside of the room with the bunk beds, and this evil entity was trying to get her. So in her dream, she runs over to the door that connects the bunk room to their bedroom and starts banging on it, hoping that her husband will open it to let her inside. She said she's banging on this door with all of her might, but then her husband woke her up. The family, understandably, packed all of their stuff the next morning and left, despite having a few more days of their vacation planned.
That great video came from Oddities on Elm Street. Now, there are multiple Great Wolf Lodges, and I don't know the exact one she's talking about, but I have seen photos of some of them, and I have to say, they really do give off eerie, creepy, shining vibes. As soon as hearing my child say, both of them, something scared them, and one was saying Mom, but it wasn't really that child, I would not be staying there any longer.
Have you heard of the fake house theory? So there's these people who believe that the cities and towns that we live in are not as big as we actually think. And that within these cities and towns, there are these fake houses and fake businesses that are sort of put there as props. And you know, as I started to think about it more, I live in a town of 10,000 people. But in the past 7 years that I've been here, I've probably only encountered a couple hundred people. And when I've lived in other cities, right, the amount of people that I've seen has been very limited, very small. So are our cities and towns actually much smaller? Like, are there all these empty houses that are just essentially props and businesses that don't exist? And basically we are living in one big lie. Now, it's easy to get under the illusion of the actual size of a town or city. Because when you think about it, if you go to a stadium, right? When you see that stadium packed, it looks like there's 1 million people there. But they can only hold up to like 60, 80,000. But to you, it appears like that's millions and millions of people. And so it would be easy to be deceived and think, well, this town has millions of people, or, you know, this city has millions of people, but I only see so many people all the time. So what do you think? Are we living in cities and towns that are fake?
That video came from Parahan251, and I was saying this to my wife, I think it was yesterday. We kept driving past a couple buildings that we noticed that are in our town that we never see anybody go in and out of, not once since we live here, and they always look very odd. I'll take a picture of one next time, but it just makes me wonder, going along with his video, are they just fake buildings for some specific reason?
Pictures from the microscope. This is German rain. And if you want to know what this liquid does, you can have a look at it in the lab. When you have bigger amounts of it, it looks like this. It's a liquid crystal. This liquid is self-organizing physically. And this, at the moment, is sleeping. It's not aware of being observed. It's quiet. Sometimes when it doesn't like to be observed, it might jump out of the pot straight into your face. If you have 2 of those in one room, get them 5 meters close to each other, they stare at each other, then they decide that they want to be united. And then they start to pull. It's like magnetism, but it's intelligent. And when they realize that you hold them within the vessel and they cannot escape, they get angry and start to shake the vessel and try to break through the wall. Because they know once they are through, they can flow over the ground and unite to a bigger unit. This is something you can just observe in the lab. And especially this liquid was extracted from those black stones. This is World War II leftovers. We found them in an underground facility in Bavaria, 1/2 ton of it. So we can imagine that the SS processed quite a bit of this. And I guess that the guys found also the technology to extract the oil from it. Must have been there in written form because they did it in the lab successfully. If you look at those stones, you have a brief history of things reported out of former times. You have, if you look at H.P. Lovecraft, the descriptions of the black magic communities in Eastern Europe, they had kind of sculptures out of this black oil schist. And once a year they went there slaughtering little babies to get the demons out of the stone, sacrificing little children to communicate and get the service from the demons. This is one thing mentioned. If you go back in history, you find them in the Kaaba in Mecca, the same form of phallus-shaped structure that is described in Vedic script as Shiva's lingam, that is described in this Lovecraft script. A fragment of it is part of a central part of the Kaaba.
That individual speaking is Harold Vella, and he has done a lot of very interesting connections going right back to the Black Goo. And again, it just has so much interesting history and lore behind it that when seeing something like that on that ship, that news story coming out, with the interesting timing that it's paralleling with the whole quote-unquote alien stuff that they're now saying is interdimensional or even demons, what type of role is that news story going to have?
This is one of the scariest stories to come out of Tennessee. I tell a lot of scary stories in the dark, but this one truly makes my skin crawl. It actually makes me sick to my stomach to think about what could have possibly happened to this family in Waynesboro, Tennessee. This family was the Flight family. They were a small family of 4 that lived on a nice rural farm. Now, this farm, they had cows, chickens, pigs, your essential stuff. It's a husband, wife, a son, and a 1-year-old baby. Their neighbor had actually asked them to slaughter a pig for him. The neighbor had paid them to do so, and the day came for him to pick up his pig, and he never heard from his neighbors. So Mr. Lomax, the neighbor who had paid for the hog to be slaughtered, walked over to their farm. It was actually a pretty good walk for him, but he made it over there, and when he got there, he found the front door wide open. He peeked in, and he yelled for the family. No answer, no response from the Flight family. He walks into the house, and he's trying to announce himself, because you gotta think, they're out in the country. You can get taken out for walking on somebody's property and trespassing. And when he peeks into the kitchen, he sees their 1-year-old baby sitting in the high chair smiling. Now, this is going to sound like something out of a horror movie, but it is 100% true. You can look this story up for yourself and read the deep dive details. This 1-year-old baby was creepily in this high chair, just smiling away. No noise, not being upset, not crying. Now, mind you, this is in the late afternoon. Mr. Lomax looks around, and he yells again for the family. Surely they must be nearby. They're not. The dinner table was completely made. All the plates were out. Everything was in order. It looked like they were about to sit down for a nice family dinner. All their belongings were there. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except for the fact they weren't there, except for the 1-year-old baby. Mr. Lomax picked the baby up. He walked back to his house, and then he had to go actually into town, because this is before cell phones. He had to go into town and contact the police. The police came back, and despite their greatest efforts, to this day, the Flight family has never been found. Their belongings are still there. There's no sign of a struggle. The only odd thing was that front door that was left open. Now, many people accused Mr. Lomax for being the one that did this, because he's the one who found them. Was he trying to get this hog for free? Was he trying to take their farm over? Nothing ever came out of this. His whole family vouched for him that he'd been there with them the whole time. There's no way he could have done this. There's no sign of a struggle. So even if he did do something to them, there was zero sign of that. The canines never found any trace of them, and their vehicle was actually still in the driveway. Now, people have speculated, did they abandon this baby? Well, why didn't they take their belongings? You know, back then, people were poor, and they would often abandon their kids and even give their kids away. But their belongings were still there. Their farm was worth a lot. They had tons of cows, tons of chickens, tons of sheep. It was a nice working farm. To this day, no one ever knows what's happened to that family. The baby went on to be adopted. And that family's property, the creepy history didn't stop there. Years later, a pregnant girl was actually murdered by her in-laws at the foot of the property. There was a teenage boy who went missing and then had later found drowned in a pond on that property. This property has still to this day sat vacant. It has been bought by another family, but they have not built anything on it, and they don't seem to be using it. This story has sparked so much debate in Tennessee of what could have happened to them. Did they go live a life somewhere else? Were they somewhere buried on the property? If somebody did do something to them, why did they even want to do something to them? There's so many unanswered questions about this case, and it's what bothers us, I guess, the most when we hear about it. And it's that property is considered one of the most haunted properties in the state of Tennessee. Now, that story, I hope you guys enjoyed it. But sometimes I like to do a lot of big emotional flair and a lot of like suspenseful stuff. But here's the thing, we don't know enough facts for me even get dramatic about it. The fact is, we have a million unanswered questions, and that baby is too young to remember anything. So even the baby, as it got older, couldn't tell us anything about the case. If you guys like creepy stories like this, follow our podcast. It's called Matt from Nomads. We do all kinds of creepy stuff, paranormal, conspiracies, true crime.
That great video came from Nomad's Animal Encounters, and it's just so eerie how people, especially not just one person, but a family, can just... It seems like a lot to take out an entire family for just a pig. Who knows what really happened, but some people have done far worse for less. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. If you like this channel and you want to see more, please subscribe. If you're already subscribed, please like, as any engagement does help the channel grow. Once again, thank you so much for your support.